Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman 78, The Metal Curtain issue 5 by Robert Venditti and Gavin Guidry. Superman begins his third and final round with Metallo this issue, as unlike the last couple of books, this issue decides to take stock on what is happening and deliver quite a bit of exposition. It feels like all of the exposition was left for this issue alone, as Venditti spends a lot of time connecting dots and kind of rounding out plots he has had over the last 4 issues. But I can't help but feel that it could have been done in a bit more of an organic way, as Superman, Lois, Sam Lane and Lex Luthor all meet up in the desert to discuss Metallo and the armor. This setting was kind of weird to me, since it's just like our characters standing out in like a desert void, just talking about what's been going on in the last 4 issues, and it feels really weird that they're meeting up here and not in, you know, one of Lex's hidden lairs or something like that. Yeah, a bit more of a visually interesting background to have these characters meet in. They could have met in a million other places, but we chose the desert of all places for no real reason whatsoever. The problem with what's being explained as well is that it's all things we already actually know. Stuff about the failsafe in the back of the Metallo, the kryptonite that's powering the suit. Lex Luthor was the one who sold the suit to what he thought were Americans but were really Russians. This is all stuff we've kind of all worked out ourselves, and the characters have worked out themselves over the course of those 4 issues. So with it being explained here, it's kind of redundant. We don't need that sort of stuff explained. There wasn't some new big piece of information that the characters didn't know that Lex could provide with them, or something that Sam Lane maybe was keeping from them. It all just literally boiled down to Superman having to punch Metallo just that little bit harder now. In the book's defense though, that itself is totally a 70s, 80s movie reasoning, not bothering with some complex plot to take down the bad guy. The hero just needs to punch him a bit more. Look at movies like Rocky, or even some of the later Superman films like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. It's all just about hitting the villain a bit more harder in the 3rd act. It's just weird that the book takes so long to get to that reasoning. Usually they get to that reasoning pretty quickly, but here it's taken us 5 issues. Maybe if it's read all in one sitting and not on a monthly basis like we are doing here, it reads better and kind of fits together a bit more, since it's one long story you're reading. But being that they obviously knew the book would be coming out, you know, episodically, you know, an issue a month, you would think that that story would be built to accommodate that. You know, a good writer should be able to accommodate that, and it's very strange that someone like Venditti is doing this like this, especially since the first series of this Superman 78 book wasn't done like that at all, and still felt like a movie but was more structured, and each issue had a bit more meat to it than this series is. The most interesting thing about the book continues to be the cutaways to Metallo and his handler Morozov. I love we are getting more of the villain's point of view this time round in this series, as this version of Metallo is so interesting because he's a full-on believer in his people and his country, and will do anything to make sure its future and his future is secure. It's also been really cool seeing the dichotomy of how kryptonite is affecting him and Superman. Obviously we see it affect Superman as it usually does, you know, weakens him and everything, but with Metallo it makes him stronger, but also kind of poisons his mind a little bit and makes him very erratic, which we see come to a culmination here where he ends up turning on Morozov and his Russian handlers so he can go and kill Superman, something that he desperately wants to do so his people will be free in his eyes. It's such a really interesting dichotomy, and I like that every time Venditti goes to explore that, we get to see a bit more of that, and it keeps building and evolving. It's just the problem is there's not enough of it. It keeps cutting away back to the other story with exposition and everything, and I wish we could have a little bit more time with this Metallo, since he's such a really interesting character. Superman eventually decides to confront Metallo on his own turf, and we get a reverse of the last issue with the hero arriving in Moscow, but instead of violence like what Metallo did in Washington, he tries to help the people and assure them that he isn't a threat, but they've been so indoctrinated to think that Superman is, you know, the evil American bad guy that they just run away from him. him, something that Superman doesn't really like. He's not used to that sort of stuff. It's a real Superman thing to want to confront a villain solely based on the belief that you can change them and make them see the error of their ways with just their words. And I do like the little confrontation that Superman has with Metallo here towards the end, where he wants to take full responsibility for everything and wants the villain to promise him that he will be the only one hurt and the people both in Russia and America won't be the only one hurt. But of course, Metallo, being the unstable maniac he is, doesn't care about any of that and just wants to kill Superman because he's the beginning of this American poison. And I like that there doesn't seem to be any reasoning with him, and I'm intrigued to see how Vendetti's going to square this circle at the end, where what is Superman going to do to stop this villain? Obviously he's going to try and get him out of the suit, but also Metallo, Nikolai, is also strong out of the suit as well, and he's got super strength and things that we don't usually see Metallo have. So I'm intrigued to see if he does anything with that, since that is also made crystal clear in this issue with the cutaways to Metallo that he has enhanced strength outside of the suit and can't be hurt and can actually access the kryptonite powers outside of the suit. Gavin Guidry's art, again, continues to be fantastic. I love all of the stuff with the Metallo Superman stuff towards the end. The start of the book was a bit sort of, you know, stock standard. As I said, like, I don't like how it was set in just this void of desert. It's very visually unappealing. There's just characters standing against, you know, blank voids delivering exposition. It's not a really good look visually, but all the stuff at the end with Morozov and Nikolai talking was great. I like how all of the Russians, which you usually associate, you know, with, you know, the color red, you know, the Red Army and, you know, red flags and all that. I like that he bathes Morozov and Nikolai in like a green, and he obviously gives them like green army fatigues and everything, and I like that idea that it's kind of like changed colors a little bit and, you know, reflecting the kryptonite that is coursing through Nikolai's veins, and I think that's a really cool visual. The 5th issue of Superman 78 finally gave the book some much needed exposition. However, this late in the game, it was exposition for stuff that we could probably work out on our own if you'd been following along with the book. The art still continues to be fantastic and in some parts quite visually interesting in telling the story, and the exploration of Metallo and his motivations continues to be the most interesting thing of the book, and I do look forward to seeing how his arc ends in the coming issues. I'm going to give this issue a 6.5 out of 10.